speaking concerning Genesis 33. Yeah, we're moving right along, huh? All right. Let's jump right in. Let me have, well, I'll read the first couple. Yeah, it looks a little off, doesn't it? How's that? Still look a little off, doesn't it? That's a little better? Okay, still look a little blurry to me. Okay. Well, right there. Better. Okay. Oh, yeah. Maids and the children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hindermost. You know, in that, Yaakov speaks to the children of Christianity, and he's one of the forefathers. You know, this speaks volumes. You know, for this is the way that he structured himself. You know, in case of calamity. You know, and therefore within this we can see a way that we can structure ourselves. You know, in case of calamity as well. You know, he put, you know, what was to him the most expandable, if you would. You know, of course, none of your family is expandable per se, but he put those, you know, if he had to lose some, he put those out front, and the ones that he absolutely adored the most, he put last. Can you see that? Yeah. You know, and there's you know, I believe that there's even a lesson to be learned within the order in which he presented them, because, you know, this is what he's saying. If the enemy come up against me, then this is what, you know, what I'm willing to lose first. And we see here that who he put out front was, he put the handmaids and their children foremost. Now, as a reminder, the handmaids' children, the handmaids were Bilhah and Zilpah, and their children was Dan and Bilhah's children was Dan and Naphtali, and Zilpah's children was Gad and Asher. We learned this from Genesis 35, 25, and 26, amongst other places. But it says the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali, and it says in verse 26, and the sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. Oh, these are the sons of Yaakov, which were born to him in Padan Aram. Okay, so these are the ones that's out front. So imagine all of us as Yaakov, you know, and you know, in that now Yaakov is, you know, has been named Israel, and, you know, we're to be Israelites, if you would, you know, and here it is, the enemy come upon us. You know, what are we going to put out front? You know, and he's saying, you know, well, how about Dan and Naphtali? You know, and Dan speaks to judge, and Naphtali means wrestlings. So, in a manner of speaking, you know, you can put out front the first thing that's expandable in your count is your judgment and the things that you wrestle with. You know, along with Gad and Asher. Gad's meaning good fortune. It can also mean a truth, but we're going to use good fortune in this sense. And Asher meaning happy. You know, so the first things that are expandable are the things that you pronounce your judgment over, and the things that you wrestle with. You know, secondly is your good fortune and happiness. You know, and I know, you know, some people may put that last, like, you know, nah, that's the last thing that's leaving. You know, but Yaakov put it out front. Then verse 2 of Genesis 33 says that after these children, and handmaids, he put Leah and her children afterwards. You know, and so the next in line, you know, for the enemy to go through would be the sons of Leah, you know, which was Reuben, Yaakov's firstborn, and Simeon, and Levi, and Yehuda, and Issachar, and Zebulun. Okay, now Reuben means behold a son, and when you look at these when you look at these names and how they were born, you know, they kind of tell a little story. You know, we see Reuben, behold a son, Simeon, hearing, Levi, who's joined to. So you can see a firstborn son that's hearing and joined to Yah, and Yehuda, and a praiser of Yah. You know, and then you have Issachar and Zebulun. Issachar meaning a reward, and Zebulun speaking to a dwelling place or a habitation. You know, and so you see that the second thing that, you know, that's you know, you would put in before the enemy, not that you want to lose anything, but it would be that firstborn son that's hearing and joined to Yah and praising Yah, you know, and that received rewards of Yah because he's dwelling in his habitation. You know, and it sounds like, you know, well, you know, that's be the last thing I want to give up to. Yeah, you know, and this is just in dire straits. You know, keeping in mind that the firstborn kind of speaks to your flesh man, which is the firstborn. You know, your flesh man is the first one to embrace the teachings and instructions of the Most High, and it's the first ones to follow after Yahshua. You know, but then we see that last he put Rachel and Joseph hindermost. You know, now Benjamin hadn't been born yet, but you know, later he would be there. You know, so this is teaching us, spiritually speaking, that, you know, the most valuable thing would be that lamb. You know, because all the other women names mean weak and diseased and, you know, and things of that nature. But Rachel's name meant, and you know, a lamb. You know, and we're called to be sheeple following after our great shepherd Yahshua. Amen. You know, and so we see that the most valuable thing was that lamb and her child, which is Joseph, which meant increase. You know, and later would be Benjamin, because this would be that increase that was promised to be given. And so we see within this that the thing that you want to hold on to most is the part of you that was added of Yah. That is, you know, the spirit man, the one that was fathered from above. You know, that's the last one. That's the one you want to hold on to. That's the increase of Elohim that you've been given. That's the one that will become the son of the right hand of, and we know Yahushua is the right hand of the Father. You know, so, you know, just a little spiritual order of priority, if you would, you know, that's presented here. And the number one reason that Yaakov even put them in this order is because he was afraid of, you know, them, Esau coming up against them and destroying them. You know, hence he said in Genesis 32:8, if Esau come to one company and smited the other company, which is left shall escape. You know, and so it is in our lives and the lives of us as believers. You know, that spirit man that comes later, that comes from the lamb following after the great shepherd Yahshua, is the one that you want to protect at all costs. All right, let's move on to verses 3 through 9. Let me have my first reader read Genesis 33, 3 through 9, please.
And he passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times, until he came near to his brother. And Esau ran to meet him, and embraced him, and fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted up his eyes, and saw the woman, and the children, and said, Who are those with thee? And he said, the children which Elohim had graciously given thy servant. Then the handmaidens came near, they and their children, and they bowed themselves. And Leah also with her children came near, and bowed themselves. And after came Joseph near Rachel, and they bowed themselves. And he said, what meanest thou by all this drove which I met? And he said, these are to find grace in the sight of my Adonai. And Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep that thou hast haste unto thyself.
Okay, so if we look at this, we kind of see a pattern. We first of all, we see Yaakov passing over and says, and he bowed himself to the ground 7 times. Now this was the ancient custom, and when one wanted to show great reverence, to someone, even to their Adonai or their Lord, they would bow 7 times before him, and so we see him doing this, and Esau received it well, he would run into him and embracing him, and really happy to see one another, but he doesn't stop there, Esau asks him about his children, and he says, these are the children which Elohim graciously is given thy servant. So he's again presenting himself, subservient to his brother. Then it says, and the children came and he had them bow themselves, to him. And then it said, and Leah also came and bowed themselves. So he's showing that, myself and all that I have are your servants, and finally himself and Rachel, they came and bowed themselves, before him, again showing that him and his whole family are subservient to Esau. Now he asked, well, what meanest thou by all these droves, all these animals, that you done sent, and he said, they're to find grace in the sight of my Adonai. Now keep in mind, as a backdrop to the story, last time they seen one another, Esau had swore to kill him, had swore to kill Yaakov, and so here it is, this is his return home, 20 years later, and, he don't know what type of, disposition, Esau has. And, all he knows is, last time he seen him, he wanted to kill him, which prompted his leaving in the first place. And so here it is, he's coming back, and it was all over the blessing that he had received from his father, And so we see him actually, bowing himself, having his family bow himself, and then he offers them this beautiful gift, and Esau says, I have enough, my brother. Keep that which thou hast unto thyself. When you look at this word enough, you see that it's not just that, Esau saying, I have enough. The word is rob in the Hebrew number 72:27, and it means an abundance or much. So Esau is saying, man, I got plenty. I don't need yours. Keep yours. I have plenty. I have enough. And so that was the situation. In verses 10 and 11, Yaakov goes on to say, nay, I pray thee, if now I have found grace in thy sight, and received my present at my hand. For therefore I have seen thy face as though I have seen the face of Elohim, and thou wast pleased with me. Now he's pouring it on really thick here, right? And he goes on to say, take, I pray thee, my blessing that is brought to thee, because Elohim have dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough, and he urged him, and he took it. Now, if he would not have taken it, that would have been considered a really insulting to Yaakov, and it would have also kind of spoke to him, maybe I didn't forgive you, and it's still on, and I still might kill you type deal, But by him taking it, it kind of put a squash to it and put everyone at ease, so that Yaakov wouldn't have to feel like he's have to look over his shoulder for his brother, And so, we see that his gift actually worked, and his plan that he had, actually worked. Now, when you look back over this whole scenario, what you'll see is that Yaakov was very, very, very worried about Esau, because of the previous aforementioned scenario with him stealing his blessing, and Esau promising, swearing to kill him, So here it is, he was really, really worried about this, and even though they don't come to blows, I want you to see the mental struggle that Yaakov had in dealing with Esau, because that is the same type of mental struggle that we'll have in dealing with Esau. And the way that he overcomes him is even with one of Yeshua's commands. Luke 6:35 we read, "But love ye your enemies and do good, and lend, hoping for nothing again, and your reward shall be great, that ye shall be the children of the highest, for he is kind unto the thankful and to the evil." We see here that Yaakov took this type of approach, even though he was the sworn enemy of his brother. He actually sent him a present. He done good. Even though he knew his brother didn't like him, he done good unto him anyway. And this is the way that we're to fight spiritually. And this gets lost a lot, because a lot of times people have spiritual, battle that comes upon them, and immediately they want to, put the boxing gloves on. They want to start, physically fighting, and sometimes even with the brethren. It's not supposed to be like that. So, the way we get around, the way we fight is quite a bit different. Genesis 30-12, and he said, "Let us take our journey and let us go, and I will go before thee." This is Esau speaking. Let me have my next reader read verses 13-17, please.
And he said unto him, My Adonai knoweth that the children are tender, and the flocks and herds with young are with me. And if men should overdrive them one day, all the flock will die. Let my Adonai, I pray thee, pass over before his servant, and I will lead on softly, according as the cattle that goeth before me, and the children be able to endure, until I come unto my Adonai, unto Seir. Let peoples, drop down. And Esau said, Let me now leave with thee some of the folk that are with me. And he said, What needeth it? Let me find grace in the sight of my Adonai. So Esau returned that day on his way unto Seir. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and built him an house, and made booths for his cattle. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth.
Okay, so we see here in verses 13 and 14, Yaakov still continuing to lay it on thick with his brother. He's saying, "My Adonai, knoweth that the children are tender and the flocks and herds are young," because what Esau wanted to do, he wanted to lead him. He wanted to lead Yaakov back, to the land, to his land, and we as Yaakov, we don't want to be led by Esau. Amen. We don't want to be led by Esau, but we have to be careful how we deal with Esau, because he's he can be quite rough, and so we see here him again in verse 14. "Let my Adonai," again showing himself subservient unto Esau, "I pray thee pass over before his servant, and I will lead on softly, according as the cattle that goeth before me, and the children be able to endure, until I come unto my Adonai, unto Seir." Remember Seir, spoke to a rough place. It spoke to a devilish place. Now, again, we look back at this blessing that was given unto Yaakov, even that Joy pointed out earlier in this during this prayer. Genesis 27:29 is a part of the blessing that Yaakov received before he left, that he kind of stole from his brother. It says, "Let people serve thee and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren. and let thy mother's son bow down to thee. Cursed be everyone that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. Okay, so when we look at this, we see the exact opposite, going on here. We see that Yaakov is presenting himself as a servant unto Esau. But we also have to have, insight into the situation. For Esau, Yaakov was at a very vulnerable place. Here it is, he was out in the middle of the wilderness. He had been traveling for a very long journey, and he was very vulnerable. He had his wives and kids. He was in no position to be really fighting. He had so much to lose. Everything, his whole home front was at risk, and so he acted very wisely. And this is also one of the things that Yahshua teaches. In Matthew 10:16, he says, "Behold, I send ye forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." And so we see Yaakov handling this situation in such a way that he was being very wise. He was being very wise, yet he was being harmless, and it got the job done. And if it worked for him, it'll work for us. We have to start using our heads for something other than hat racks. We have to think about the situations and circumstances we find ourselves in, and think how we can be wise, yet harmless, to get out of them. Now he says, says in verse 15 that Esau said, "Let me now leave some of the folk that are with me." We don't want none of Esau folks with us either. And so Yaakov refused that too. What need of it? Let me find grace in the sight of my Adonai. We don't need to do that. And so here again, he's using wisdom. And so Esau returned that day, on his way to Seir. So he went back to his home. And it says, "And Yaakov journeyed to Sukkot, and built him a house and made booths for his cattle. Therefore, the name of the place is called Sukkot." Now, Sukkot is a very special place, and spiritually speaking, it has a very special significance, especially if you're asking me. For Sukkot marks the beginning of the way of Elohim for Yaakov and his family. He's done gotten to a point in his life, and if we liken him to a believer, he done gotten to a point in his life, where Elohim has fulfilled the promises that he said that he would do for him. And so, he recognized the value of Elohim, in other words. And so from this point, Elohim is his Elohim, because he made a vow previously saying that, if Elohim would do these things, that he would be his El. And so, Sukkot marks the beginning of the way of Elohim. And I want you to pay particular attention to what happens from this point, because the same thing that happens to them, in like fashion, speaks to what we have to walk through in our way of Elohim as well. When we look at other places where the word Sukkot is used, one place that sheds a lot of light on this subject is in Exodus. It was used when they were leaving out of Mitzrayim. In Exodus 12:37, we read, "And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot, about 600,000 on foot that were men besides children." And seeing, what I want you to understand is that when you're looking at, at what happened with the children of Israel, you're also looking at what's going to happen to the children of Christianity. Because it's a direct parallel. And the first place that they went to when they came out of Mitzrayim was Sukkot. They was in Ramses of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, and the first place that Yah led them to was Sukkot. Now Ramses means child of the sun, so we can see that they was in a place with the children of the sun, speaking to the sun gods, Bel and Ishtar, and so they came to a place where they came out of being they came out from amongst the children of the sun, and the first place that Yah led them to was Sukkot. Now Sukkot, as we learned on the previous slide, means booths, and a booth is a temporary dwelling. And what we're being taught here is that, you know, when you begin to follow the Most High, that you're going to have to go into a temporary dwelling. You know, you're no longer to look at yourself, you know, as you know, at home, so to speak. You begin this journey, you know, and you have to go through a temporary dwelling place in order to get to your permanent dwelling place. You know, can you see that? Even as Israel, when they left out of Mizraim, you know, the first place they went to was Sukkot, you know, prior to going into the wilderness, which was a temporary dwelling place, you know, which was on the way to their permanent dwelling place, which would have been the land of Canaan. You know, and it's no different for us. You know, now when they left out, verses 38 and 39 of Exodus 12, it says, they left out, it says, and a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And they baked unleavened breads. Well, let's stop right there for a second, because I want to speak to Yaakov and his family. Also, you know, here it is, you know, they had very much cattle. You know, and I believe that they were a mixed multitude as well. Can't prove that, you know, but, you know, here it is, their cattle very much looked like a mixed multitude. It was all speckled and striped, you know, for those, that was his take. But here it is, we see a mixed multitude going up, you know, and it says, and they baked unleavened bread, cakes of the dough, which they brought forth out of Mizraim, for it was not leavened. You know, so Sukkot also speaks to the time when you're to start eating unleavened bread. So when you come out from being a child of the sun, you know, and come out from amongst the children of the sun, I should say, and begin walking in the way of Elohim, you know, you come to Sukkot and you come to recognize that your dwelling here is just temporal, and that there's a permanent dwelling place that you're trying to get to, that you just have to go through this temporary dwelling place in order to get there. And you have to, at this point, start eating unleavened bread. You know, and I wanted to take time to talk about this a little bit, because we have the feast coming up, the Feast of Pesach or Passover, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You know, and so it's important that we understand the spiritual aspect of these feasts and not just the physical aspect, so we're not just doing stuff, but that we can do what matters most. Amen? Amen. Okay, and so, you know, Sukkot, you know, for a believer, speaks to the place, you know, when they begin to accept, you know, where they are as just being temporal. Just a means to an end. A way that you have to travel through in order to get to where you want to be. Amen? Okay, and then it says, and they baked unleavened cakes. This is when they begin to eat unleavened bread. You know, and so it's important that we understand what that means. In Exodus 13, 1 through 3, it tells us something else that Sukkot represents. And it says, and Yahuwah spake unto Moshe, saying, sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever openeth the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of beast, it is mine. And Moshe said unto the people, remember this day in which ye came out from Mizraim, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand Yahuwah brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. You know, so Sukkot also speaks to, you know, when you start to become sanctified, you know, unto Elohim. And we're sanctified by the word of Elohim, you know, and the blood of Yahushua, which is pretty much to say the word of Elohim, because Yahshua is the word of Elohim. So now your sanctification process begins here at Sukkot. Can you see that? Well, I pray you can see that.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to move on a little bit, and we're going to talk about leavened bread. You know, what is the leavening? What is the leavening that causes the bread to be leavened? Because if we come to a place of Sukkot in our walk, you know, where we come out from among the children of the sun, we're no longer keeping, you know, adhering to the things that the children of the sun does, you know, their holidays, you know, and we begin to start keeping Yah's holy days, you know, and we stop worshiping the sun with them, and we start worshiping Yahuwah Elohim, the one true El. You know, we're called to start eating non-leavened bread or unleavened bread from that point. So we need to understand, spiritually speaking, what the leaven is to make certain that we don't make a mistake and eat any leavened bread. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Now, bread speaks to teachings and instructions, you know, of Elohim. So we see a picture of teachings and instructions of Elohim. But what is the leaven? And so we're going to take a sidebar to find out, you know, to figure out and search out what this leaven is. Like my sidebar? I thought it was pretty sharp. You know? All right. Mark 8:15 and 16, it says, and he charged them, speaking about Messiah, he said, take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod. So we see here that spiritually speaking, there's a leaven of the Pharisees and there's a leaven of Herod. Who was Herod? The king. He was the king of Yahudah. You know, he wasn't Yah's king of Yahudah, but he was king of Yahudah all the same. Amen? And matter of fact, he was an Edomite, you know, of Esau. So, here it is. It says, take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. So, there's a leaven of concerning the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And, you know, the apostles were kind of, you know, the disciples / apostles were kind of in the same place as many of us, you know, didn't quite understand what was being said to them. And it says in verse 16, and they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have no bread. You know, and that was not what he was talking about, even as the Feast of Unleavened Bread is not about physical bread. You know, now I'm not going to tell you don't go through your house and take the leaven out of your house. You know, do that. You know, do the physical, you know, but make certain in all cases that you do the spiritual as well. Amen. Amen. You know, so Matthew 16, 11, and 12 teaches us what Yahshua meant. It says, how is it that ye do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread? That ye should be aware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. Then understood they how he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. Now we're learning what the spiritual leaven is. It is the doctrines of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And when he speaks about the leaven of Herod, he's speaking about the doctrines of Herod. You know, now, you say, well, Herod dead now. You know, yeah. But Herod was the king. You know, and there's a king or ruler put in place now that is not of Elohim. That is not of the kingdom of Elohim. You know, and they have their doctrines. Did you know that, I don't know how many of you went to public school. I would imagine that many of you did. You know, but everything that you was taught, you know, was signed off of by the king of this kingdom. It was by government, by the kingdoms of this world. You know, you have to understand that. And I'm not saying that, everything that you learned was bad, but what I'm saying is that there's leaven in what you learn. You know, and so that therefore you have to filter everything through the word of Elohim. You know, because that's what we know is true. Amen? You know, and so here it is. You know, there's a leaven of the Pharisees, there's a leaven of Herod, there's a leaven of the Sadducees, and it speaks to their doctrines. You know, for instance, you know, one of the some of the leaven of Herod that's prominent now today is that it's okay for 2 men or 2 women to get married. You know, that's a doctrine, of Herod, in our country. That's, the government has decreed it okay for this to take place, even though Yah says it's an abomination. So you see how you have to beware of the leaven of Herod. You have to be aware of the leaven of the rulers that are over you, so that you don't become leavened. And of course the leaven of the Pharisees, the doctrines of the Pharisees and Sadducees, they can be still seen now today. And so we're to beware of these things and avoid them. And the best way to deal with them is to filter them through the word, and whatever don't falls through, discard it. Now there's another type of leaven of the Pharisees, and it's found in Luke 12:1. It says, in the meantime, when there were gathered together an innumerable multitude of people, insomuch that they trode one upon another, he began to say unto his disciples, first of all, beware ye of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. So here it is, it's speaking about the doctrines of the Pharisees and the Sadducees as being leaven. And we also see that the leaven of the Pharisees is hypocrisy. And that's what you see in their doctrines. You see hypocrisy, and that's what you see in their works. You see hypocrisy. And this is the type of leaven that Yah wants us to abstain from. Amen. Yes. So when we begin to do this feast of unleavened bread, we want to abstain. We want to be looking throughout the house, even our lives, and trying to find, is there any leaven in the house? Are there any doctrines of the scribes and Pharisees that's hidden in our house? Is there any hypocrisy hiding within our house? Because our house is supposed to be Yah's house. Amen. So we have to make sure that it's unleavened. Some more spiritual leaven is found in 1 Corinthians 5:6-8, and I love this passage because it just kicks those that insist that Paul taught that the law is done away with and that we shouldn't do it. It just kicks them in the face, like with a combat boot, because it says in 1 Corinthians 5:6-8, it says, for your glorying is not good. Know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? Purge ye out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Mashiach, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Now get this. And now this is Paul. He's teaching the Corinthians who were Gentiles, right? He says, therefore let us keep the feast. Hello. So he was teaching the Gentiles to keep the feast. Yes. So many people purport that Paul was, against the law and that he was teaching the people not to keep the feast. That is a lie. It's, this passage kicks that right in the face. It says, therefore, let us keep the feast. What feast? The feast of unleavened bread. Not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness. So here it is, we have a couple more to add to our list of leaven. Malice is a type of spiritual leaven, and wickedness is a type of spiritual leaven. So now we have malice as spiritual wickedness. Malice as spiritual leaven, wickedness as spiritual leaven, hypocrisy as spiritual leaven, the doctrines of Pharisees as spiritual leaven, the doctrines of Sadducees are spiritual leaven, and the doctrines of Herod, spiritual leaven. See, now this is the different types of spiritual leaven that we're to abstain from. Okay, he says, therefore, let us keep the feast. And here it is, he's teaching them how to keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and the truth. And so this is how we want to keep the feast, with sincerity and truth. What is truth? Yochanan 17:17, thy word is truth. The Messiah said, I am the truth, the way, and the life. Amen. So we know what truth is. So let us keep the feast, with unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Amen. All right. Now, Genesis 33:18. You know, this gets a little deep. You may want to put your rubber boots on. But here it is. It says, and Yaakov came to Shalem, a city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, and he came from Padan Aram and pitched his tent before the city. And so now, here it is. We're not told how long he was at Sukkot, but he done left Sukkot. You know, he's traveling the way of Elohim. And he come to Shalem, a city. See, and we have to do likewise. We have to leave from out of Sukkot. We have to recognize and accept that we are in a temporary dwelling place here on this planet. You know, and being the children of the Most High, we are in a temporary dwelling place. You know, and we have to come to Shalem. We have to come to peace, to a place of peace, a city of peace. You know, with this. You know, and, you know, but in order to fully understand what's being presented here, we see Shalem. Shalem means peace, you know, number 8003 in the Hebrew, and it means completeness or peace or wholeness, you know. But what is a city, spiritually speaking and scripturally speaking? What is a city? And when we look at this word city, it's Ir in the Hebrew, number 5892. And it means a city, but specifically and directly, it speaks to an opening of the eyes. It speaks to a place that's guarded by a watch. See, because many of your cities, you know, they had watchtowers and they watched for the enemy so that they wouldn't be taken, right? Okay, so scripturally speaking, a city is any place where there's an opening of the eyes, because the cities was also places, you know, of learning. You know, people went there and they learned and their eyes were open, you know, and it's also was a place that was guarded. You know, they had, as I was aforementioned, they had guards that watched out for enemies or for thieves and burglars throughout the night so that they wouldn't be caught unawares, okay? Now, spiritually speaking, you know, we have a city that we're supposed to come to, you know, and where we're supposed to find our peace and our wholeness, which also should work to open our eyes, you know, and there's also should be some guards watching, you know, and guarding that city, you know, and I'm going to try to paint this spiritual picture so that you can see it. In Acts 26:15 through 18, let me have my next reader read Acts 26:15 through 18.
And I said, who art thou, Adonai? And he said, I am Yeshua, whom thou persecutest. But rise and stand upon thy feet, for I have appeared unto thee for this purpose, to make thee a minister and a witness both of these things which thou hast seen, and of those things in which I will appear unto thee, delivering thee from the people and from the Gentiles, unto whom now I send thee, to open their eyes and to run them from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan unto Elohim, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among them which are sanctified by faith that is in me.
Hallelujah. Thank you. Okay, now just a little backdrop to the story. This message is being spoken unto Apostle Paul, okay? So it's been spoken unto Apostle Paul. This is when he was on his way to Damascus. He gets knocked off his horse, you know. And so, he's wondering what's going on. And he says, who art thou, Adonai? And he said, I am Yahushua, whom thou persecutest. Now, what I want you to see is the reason behind Yah sending his apostles out and what their job was. Because in looking at what their job was and what they were called to do, you can see this spiritual city, that Yah was establishing. You know, it says in verse 16, but rise and stand upon thy feet, for I have appeared unto thee for this purpose. What purpose? Verse 18, to open their eyes and to turn them from darkness to light and from the power of Satan unto Elohim. Okay, so, you know, now when you consider that a city, scripturally speaking, only speaks to an opening of the eyes in a place that's guarded by a watch, you can see the elements of a city in the apostles, can you not? You know, also in Luke 12, 37 and 38, you know, Yahshua speaking to his other apostles, his originals, you know, it says, blessed are those servants whom the Adonai, when he cometh, shall find watching. Verily I say unto you that he shall gird himself and make them to sit down to meat, and will come forth and serve them. You know, now here it is. We can also see that he's utilizing his apostles that he's sending forth to actually be watching, that is guarding. You know, and in verse 38 he goes on to say, and if he shall come in the second watch or come in the third watch and find them, so blessed are those servants. Now he's speaking to and describing the watch that the military troops would do over a city, over an ancient city. You know, they would be on the watchtowers and they would be having to take turns watching during the different watches to make certain that the enemy don't come upon them, you know, unawares, right? You know, and so here it is, he's likening his return, you know, to a time such as this. He's likening his return. He says, blessed are those whom the Adonai, when he comes, shall find watching. You know, so he's likening their watching to the watch of those who watch out for the enemy for a city. The only thing is, what city are we to be watching to protect? You feel me? You know, so we see here that he's making reference to the watch of a city, you know, but what city are we supposed to be watching and protecting? You know, and so we see here that his apostles, they have all the elements of a spiritual city. They're opening the eyes, and they're supposed to be guarding the place, you know, by watching. You know, and I'm here to tell you that there is a spiritual city that exists. There's a spiritual city that exists in which we are supposed to be working to open people's eyes that they might see it, and we're supposed to be watching, you know, so that the enemy doesn't come and raid it. Amen. You know, Hebrews 11, 8 through 10, you know, speaks about Abraham and speaks about, you know, what he was doing when he was on earth. You know, and it says, and by faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed. And he went out not knowing whither he went. Anybody ever feel like in this walk they don't know where they're going? You know, verse 9, it says, by faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac. Tabernacles, that's booths. With Yitzhak and Yaakov, their heirs with him of the same promise, for he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim. Hallelujah. See, I'm trying to get you to see that there's a spiritual city that we're supposed to be looking towards. There's a spiritual city that we're supposed to be guarding. There's a spiritual city that we're supposed to be helping people to see. Amen. You know, Abraham was looking for this city. See, it's a city which have foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim. It's not one of these man-made cities. See, this is why we're called to beware of the leaven of Herod. See, because he doesn't have our best interest at heart. He has the best interest of his kingdom at heart. See, we're supposed to have the best interest of our kingdom at heart. And our king. Amen. You know, so what is this spiritual city? Is there anything else in scripture that speaks to it? There absolutely is. When we look at Revelations 21:10 through 14, it says, and he carried me away in the Ruach to a great and high mountain, and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from Elohim, having the glory of Elohim, and her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and the names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. Let's stop right there for a second. See, because this spiritual city has 12 gates. Gates are where you enter or exit. Amen. Okay, so if you want to get into the spiritual city, then you have to go through one of the gates. You know, and so if you're going to go through one of the gates, then it's going to have to be one of the tribes of Israel. See, because even though Yahshua is our king, he's only the king of one nation, and that nation is Israel. He's the rightful heir to the throne of the king of David, right? Okay, so here it is. We see that the way you enter in, you know, is through one of the gates. And these gates are the 12 tribes of Israel. You know, but Abraham, he looked for a city which had foundations. You know, verse 13 and 14 says, on the east 3 gates, and on the north 3 gates, and on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. And the wall of the city. Remember that wall that was great and high? That wall and the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. You know, I pray that you can, that someone's eyes is being opened to see the spiritual city. I pray that somebody will climb up on one of these walls and begin to look for the enemy. Hallelujah. You know, see, we see that the walls of the city had these 12 foundations, and those foundations, and in them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. See, this is why they're supposed to be watching, because they are the ones that are guarding. They are the ones that keeping the enemy out of the city. See, you have to understand this. You have to get this. You have to be able to see New Jerusalem. You have to understand that we're just not out here just to be out here. You have to understand that this is a temporary dwelling place. You know, that we're dwelling in booths. These are sukkos. You know, but we have a place that our Messiah is going to prepare for us, and it's called New Jerusalem. Genesis 33:18. You know, it says that this city was of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. Now, what is Shechem? When we look at Shechem in the Hebrew is 79:27, and it speaks to a neck or a place of burdens. You know, now it speaks to a place where you put the burdens. And see, this is where we will put the burden. We will put the burden on the necks, you know, of the people. Amen. For those burden bearers, you know, if you're not a burden bearer, then of course we're not going to put the burden on you. See, and this is what Yahshua was saying. You know, come and follow me. My yoke is light. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light, or vice versa. You know, but you know, see, there is a burden to be carried. But what is this burden? You know, because Shalom, you know, and even Jerusalem, you know, means city of peace. And we see Shechem, which also was a city of peace, right? So I pray you can see this, the parallel there, you know. But it was of Shechem, and Shechem, you know, means a place of burdens. Now, what does this burden speak to? Well, I guess we're gonna get to that in a second. But verse 19 goes on to say, and he brought a parcel of a field. You know, so here it is. He brought stake, you know, in this place. You know, and we're to do likewise. You know, Yahshua said the kingdom of Elohim is like unto one who goes and find a pearl of great price and goes and sell all that he has and goes and buy the field. Amen. You know, so, you know, we're to see this city and go and get us a plot of land up over there, right? You know, we want our spot over there. Amen. You know, so, you know, he goes and he gets his spot, and he buys a parcel of field, and where he lays his tent, at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Now, this is just how Yasum's word is. You know, interestingly enough, Hamor, his name means a male's behind. Well, a male donkey, I should say. You know, or, you know, a male donkey or mule. Okay, you know, now a mule was used for just about, you know, for was the essential, the non for lack of the term I'm trying to think of, it was the animal that was utilized for carrying the burdens of the people, you know, more than anything. You know, yes, the camels were as well, but the mules were much cheaper, and so even the poor people had a mule. You know, only the rich people had camels. You know, and so here it is. Hamor means to be a male behind or a male mule. You know, and these are the ones that carries the burdens. You know, these are the burden bearers, if you would. You know, and the donkey is a picture of the ecclesia or church. You know, and so here it is. We see presented here in this passage a picture of the city of Shalom, and we see that it's at a place, you know, where the burden bearers are, and he's even the ruler of it. You know, the burden bearers, and no one carried a burden larger than our Messiah Yeshua, right? You know. Now it says that, you know, Yaakov pays 100 pieces of money. This word money is kasar. It actually means or kasar or kasef. I forget, but it means silver. You know, and so, you know, silver was what is what everyone had to pay for their redemption. You know, but you know, there's a lot in that. But here it is. This 100 speaks to the children of promise, or Elohim's election of grace. You know, and so here it is. He's securing him a place in the city of Shalom. See, and that's what we want to do, y'all. You know, we want to secure us a place in New Jerusalem, amen? You know, now it's of Shechem, it's of that place of burdens. You know, and everybody there was, you know, some burden bearers. And so if you want to get there, you're going to have to be a burden bearer too, amen? You know, now the question is what is the burden that we have to bear? Zechariah 9:1 and Malachi 1:1 speaks to what this burden is. It was very common, you know, in biblical times that when it concerned the burden of Yahuwah, it spoke to the word of Yahuwah. You know, and so this is what the Messiah was talking about when he said his burden is light. You know, and this is was what the burden of Yahuwah was throughout Scripture. You know, so much so that we see that some of the prophets even start off their sayings, you know, with this phrase. In Zechariah 9:1, we read, it says, the burden of the word of Yahuwah in the land of Hadrach and Damascus shall be the rest thereof, when the eyes of man as of all the tribes of Israel shall be toward Yahuwah. In Malachi 1:1, the burden of the word of Yahuwah to Israel by Malachi. So you see, the burden of the word of Yahuwah is the burden that the burden bearers of Yahuwah have to carry. Amen. You know, and so we have to carry this word with us, and we have to do this word, and this is what we're called to do while we're in these temporary dwelling places. Amen. Amen. You know, so this is real important to understand. Because if we don't understand this, then we're not going to understand what we're supposed to be doing out here in this wilderness. We're not just supposed to be trying to make it. We're not just supposed to be feasting. We're not just supposed to be feasting on this on the bread, you know, and just taking the benefits of Elohim. But you know, we have a burden to carry too, and that is the word of Elohim. That is, we have to do what he says. Amen. You know, we have to do what he says. And it says, and he erected there an altar and called it El Elohi Yisrael. You know, Elohim is my El. You know, El, he has officially made Yah his El. Now, when we look back to Genesis 28, verses 20 through 22, you don't have it on the screen, but I'm going to read it. You know, it speaks about when he first started out, you know, to go get him a wife. you know, and he vowed a vow to Elohim after having a dream, after Elohim came to him in a dream. And it says, and Yaakov vowed a vow, saying, if Elohim will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall Yahuwah be my Elohim. You know, Yah had promised to do all that stuff, but he was like, you know, no, not until you do it. You know, well, I consider you my Elohim. And he goes on in verse 22 and says, and this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be Elohim's house, and of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. See, and this is why we read in verse 20 of Genesis 33, it says, and he erected there an altar. See, because he was going to offer unto Elohim what he had promised to give unto Elohim. Amen. What he had vowed to give him. You know, he was going there to give his tenth. You know, and so here it is, we see him erecting an altar, you know, so that he can give, you know, to Elohim what he vowed to give, saying that Elohim fulfilled his end of the bargain. Amen. You know, we see that he done gotten past Laban. He done gotten past wrestling with the angel of Elohim. He done gotten past his brother Esau, and Yah have truly kept his word. You know, and so, you know, he keeps his. And, you know, there's a lesson to be learned in that. You know, we have to keep our word, you know, when we vow vows to Elohim. But before we go, let us also consider that even though Yaakov was living within the land of Canaan, you know, that was promised to him. See, I want you to consider this, because people don't think about this stuff. You know, see, but, you know, if you don't understand this, then you're not going to understand the walk that we're walking now today. You have to understand that Yaakov was even living in the land that was promised to him and his family, yet it wasn't yet theirs. Can you see that? Yeah. You know, and that Yah had not yet given it unto them. See, and what I want you to understand is that even though we're living in the world that will one day be turned over to Yahshua, it's not yet ours. Yeah. See, you have to be able to see that. You have to understand that. It's not yet ours. You know, so even as Yaakov and his family was, so are Yahshua and his family. You know, we're living in the world that's promised unto us, but it's not yet ours. Yes. Now, this in turn teaches us our status in the world today. See, we have to understand our status in the world today. See, because so many of us get tripped up not understanding our status in the world, because we think it should be this way or that way, not understanding that it's not our world yet. It's their world. Amen? You know, to help us understand this a little more fully, let's take a look at Hebrews 11, 13 through 16. It's speaking about those who had faith. It says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off. See, you may die without actually seeing all the promises that the word speaks of. You know, but still, you know, you should be able to see them afar off. It goes on to say, and we're persuaded of them. See, we're supposed to be persuaded from those promises of Elohim. We're supposed to allow them to persuade us in our actions and reactions within the world now today. And it goes on to say, and embrace them and confess that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. See, how many of you feel like a stranger or a pilgrim on the earth? See, if you don't feel like a stranger or a pilgrim upon the earth, it's because you're not doing something right. See, because when you get this thing right, you're going to feel like a stranger. You're going to feel a little peculiar. You're going to feel like you're just a pilgrim here. You're going to feel like you don't belong. See, and that's exactly the way you're supposed to feel, because that's exactly the way all the saints that preceded us felt. It goes on in verse 14, it says, for they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had an opportunity to have returned. Just like us. We come out, we come into Sukkot, we realize that we're in this temporary dwelling, we go out into the wilderness, and then we decide we don't like it, and then some of us turn around and say, I'm going back to the world. And then some of us, we only go back to the world halfway, and we got one foot in the world and the other foot, you know, in Yah. And we think we doing something. See, not realizing that we actually lukewarm and that Yah's going to spew us out of his mouth. You know, you got to choose. He wants you to be either hot or cold. Amen. He wants you to jump in or jump out. You know, you can't have it both ways. Okay, now, verse 16 goes on to tell us, says, but now they desire a better country. That is a heavenly, wherefore Elohim is not ashamed to be called their Elohim. For he hath prepared for them a city. See, we have a city that we're looking forward to, even New Jerusalem, you know, even a city in which we even make up the very parts of the city. You know, we have a place, you know. Oh, man, it's just a wonderful, beautiful story, you know, but you have to have faith. You have to believe in the promises that was given. Hebrews 11:24-27, by faith, Moshe, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. How many of us refuse to be called the son of the world? How many of us refuse to be called the sons of this world, or the sons of this place in where we are now? You know, what did Moshe do? It says, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of Elohim than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. See, so many people want to choose the pleasures of sin for a season. But I encourage you to rather suffer affliction with the people of Elohim. You know, verse 26, esteeming the reproach of Messiah greater riches than the treasures in Mitzrayim. You know, I think what we have in Messiah is way greater than what this world has to offer. For he had respect unto the recompense of reward. By faith he forsook Mitzrayim. He forsook Egypt, even as we should forsake this world, not fearing the wrath of the king. See, because the king gonna try to stop you. See, because he don't want his the volume of his what do you call it, population. He don't want his population to dwindle. You know, because the more large his population is, the more taxes he can collect. Amen. Hallelujah. You know, see, so he's not going to let you go easy. See, but, you know, you got to get to the point in your life where you forsake the world and you don't fear the wrath of its king. You know, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. We have Yahshua, our king. Yes, he's invisible. But we have to be as Moshe was. We have to be as all the saints that preceded us was. And we have to even know that even though we don't see Yahushua, that he still is here. He's still watching over us. He's abiding in us even as we're abiding in him. Even though he's invisible, he's yet with us. Even though we can't see him, he's still our king and he's still ruling and reigning over us. We got to get this. That's all I have for you today. Pray with a blessing.